well, so let's continue our introducing series where we run through the new elite specializations for Guild Wars 2, and continuing the Heart of Thorns batch here, I want to go to a medium armor class, that being the Druid. So I've made a Druid here for this video. My other Druid is an Asura, which doesn't really fit the expansion well enough. So I decided to make a Sylvari, obviously a big centric role in this X-Pack as they are. And yeah, there's a lot of cool things to talk about with this elite spec. This is one of the first pure raw ideas where the devs went for a support-styled character through healing and kind of a soft reintroduction of their soft breaking away from the Trinity we'd seen at core. Druid changed the game in a ton of ways. Namely, it could heal very well, but also buff people's damage extremely well at the same time, thus always justifying a slot in the new endgame content like raids that they'd been adding and so on. So yeah, here we are in the Maguma jungle, I think, as the sun sets, and let's roll on through all the different aspects of the Druid. So here I actually have the page open for ArenaNet's initial announcement of the Druids, and they say this: welcome friends to the reveal of the Ranger Elite Specialization. As a long-time ally of nature, the Ranger can now channel the strength of Tyria itself after tapping into the primal forces of the Maguma jungle. So Druids did exist in lore before they became playable in the capacity they now are for Heart of Thorns, and Druid was actually the very first one talked about. When they revealed the expansion on stage, the game director suggested that the Druid could be a thing. The first one we got real tangible details about was the Chronomancer, as I mentioned in that video. But technically the first one we ever heard about was actually this, the Druid. So carrying their staff into battle, that's their weapon here. You can see I've currently got equipped Yggdrasil. This is the ascended unique staff, sort of the final staff you get as a Druid, with all this beautiful intricate detail of, it's actually very Norny, adorning the wood here. Carrying their staff into battle, the Druid bears the duty of sustaining their allies through overwhelming danger. To achieve this aim, each staff skill can be beneficially used to bolster the Druid's allies. So, yeah, let's run on in. The Druid gets access to the staff. They get to build this specific one by the end of the expansion. You get these shoulders as well. These are the, oh, hold on, what are they called here? The Druid's shoulder guards. You'll see that the gear I'm wearing is actually all white. This is a character I usually use for PvP, okay, so bear with me. But yeah, so you get the Druid shoulder guards, you get the Druid staff. I'm actually wielding the Druid stone back piece as well, which came from Heart of Thorns Living World a bit later, but I think it's kind of cool. And the armor we're in as well is also Heart of Thorns armor. This is the Laystone stuff on medium. I noticed that on the chest it actually shows like the Ranger icon, which is kind of weird. Does that happen with all classes for Laystone armor? It always shows an emblem of what kind of class you're on. Okay, so yes, not only do you get the staff, you also get access to a new selection of utility skills. This time it's Glyphs. So before the Druid got Glyphs, we only saw Glyphs on Elementalist. Now, Glyph as a type of skill is that it changes based on your attunement when it comes to elementals. So you may have the Glyph of Storms, which always creates a stormy type effect. But if you cast it in Fire attunement, it will be a Firestorm. If you cast it in Air attunement, it will be a Lightning Storm. In Earth, it will be a Dust Storm, and so on. So how is it that Ranger now gets Glyphs? They don't have attunements. Well, they kind of do as a Druid. You get access to a new form called Celestial Avatar. That is kind of the main mechanic around which most of your stuff operates. So just to have a little look at the specialization line here, you'll see the first minor reads this: Celestial Being. You gain access to Glyphs, and you can become a Celestial Avatar once you gain enough Astral Force. Generate Astral Force by healing allies and damaging foes. So we get access to a new resource, and there's two ways to get it: hitting things or healing things. You'll see here that you get 0.75% of Astral Force through damage, but you actually get a whopping 1.5% through heals. So the fastest way into Celestial Avatar, which the community for what it's worth calls as CA. So if you're ever reading a build guide and you see the phrase CA, they're always talking about the Celestial Avatar. The fastest way in really is to run heavy healing power oriented stuff and splash heals on people so that you can get in quickly. That's not always true though. A lot of people have run very glassy DPS-y Druids and just relied on the damage they do to get into the form. The truth is as well, if your allies are always very healthy and don't need much healing, then you're kind of denied the opportunity to get that 1.5%, and you're mostly reliant on damage anyway. For the purposes of this video, where I show off the mechanics of the Druid, we'll be getting it mostly through damage. In fact, I can start building it here. My pet is killing this veteran wasp here. Speaking of pets, I do want to say at the door of this video as well, you'll notice I just talked about we get staff, we get glyphs, we get CA. None of that really interacts with the pet much. And this was perhaps one of the failings of the Druid in the community's eyes as Heart of Thorns was live. Something that the devs really rectified with the next expansion, Path of Fire and the Soul Beast. Soul Beast pays tons of attention to your pet. Druid doesn't pay that much attention to your pet. Though, of course, we're very support-oriented, and we always have an ally to support in some capacity, so yeah. Obviously, it's 2019 as I make this video, and most of the specific details of the Druid will be pertaining to its current implementation that I don't foresee changing too much from now. Many of you might think you know Druid back from when Heart of Thorns came out, where it had unique DPS modifiers and stuff. A lot of that's gone now, and it's much more of a pure kind of spec that's more about building allies damage through might rather than anything else. It's gone through lots of different iterations, and I guess I'll just, you know, leave that at the door there. What you see in this video might not be what you remember of Druid. Because of more recent balance. Back to glyphs. The other thing to talk about, obviously, is we have the staff, we have the shoulders. There's also the other item, the rune, and the rune keys into glyphs. You'll see here it gives you vitality, it gives you healing power, and then it gives you a whopping 500 healing power for 3 seconds after casting a glyph. It's a really cool idea for a rune, and definitely you can see the synergies for it on playing a druid. The idea of taking this onto an elementalist is something I actually talked about way when Heart of Thorns came out. If you search on my channel, and you'll see what a terrible idea I ended up finding that being. But yeah, that's the rune of the druid, and that's the other item component that's been added to the game. So let's start off with the weapon skills. These are actually really simple and easy to talk about. In fact, I think that the staff skills are a lot more simplistic than even other core ranger weapon sets. And that's because for a lot of core ranger stuff, you kind of get this idea of double abilities. Okay, so what's on my other set here? This is fine. Like skills that give you something and your pet something at the same time. Hunter's Shot, for example. This I can fire off to stealth myself. If I miss, it does nothing. But it actually gives my pet swiftness, right? It does 2 things at once. You find that on axe skills. You find that all over the place. For staff, there's a little bit less of that going on. And it's more about how it heals and supports. It's a really fun weapon set though, and in particular I think one of these 5 skills is one of the most overpowered abilities in the game, and druids will resent me for saying this. I'm not advocating it be necessarily nerfed, because as part of the whole kit it's, you know, perhaps more balanced, but as an individual skill, one of these is obscene. So let's jump in. First I need something to target and hit. It's a shame we had all these wasps around a second ago, and now there's not so much. Let's look at the auto attack. That's Solarbeam, and a lot of the skills you'll find are themed around nature and the elements and stuff. Even a bit Zephyrite-y, I guess, with this solar beam here. There we go. Fire a concentrated beam of light, damaging the targeted foe and healing allies inside of the beam. So as a staff, this is 1200 range, as many staves are in the game. And so you get kind of a bit of damage and a bit of healing on this. I'll show you how it works. It's going to be 3 separate ticks of damage onto every target every time we channel it, and it creates this really pretty nice little beam here. I like this animation. It's not too crazy and in your face. It's got a very distinctive, recognizable sound effect, which most people who PvE or do anything in the game will recognize very clearly, because a lot of druids will spend a lot of time spamming their autos. But the other component of it is that any allies crossing this line are actually healed. And we've seen mechanics like laser beam mechanics on other classes and core classes before even Heart of Thorns came out. This one I really like, though, just being a ranger, because it means as my pet takes damage here, right, quite often he will be in the path of the beam there. So you see I'm actually healing my pet while damaging. And what that means is, just from the auto, you kind of get double value out of Celestial Being here, because you're doing damage and healing at the same time. In truth, for a lot of coordinated content, it's really hard to get the healing aspect of Solar Beam to be meaningful, but it's something to think about, and you know, just kind of a basic decent auto that's not too in your face with animations. Next, we have Astral Wisp. Send a wisp to attach to your foe. While attached, it will circle the foe, healing allies it passes through. So here a bit about a wisp here, right? I do want to be very clear with the lore. This is only vaguely related to the druids we know in lore and what happened at the Henge of Den Ravi and, you know, the oak hearts we find wandering the world. as many of you probably know, one of the big issues with Heart of Thorns was when it added the elite specializations, it didn't go very far into justifying them in-game, in-world talk. Like, it obviously borrows themes and ideas from Druids and lore, but it didn't go much further. That was one of the strengths of Path of Fire, actually adding NPCs representing the new specializations and talking about their place in the world. The Druid kind of doesn't get that, so don't think too deeply about the Wisp, right? It's just happy, rangery, naturey stuff, all right? So, we're going to send the Wisp out. This skill is a really nice one to pay attention to. Here you see the Wisp comes from our position, and then once it connects, it starts spinning in this little circle here, ticking damage away. So we're looking at an okay bit of damage here, but then there's also healing as well. What this means is, again, with my pets, as my pet gets damaged, I won't auto-attack here. If you watch the Wisp, when it swings through, it heals for 300, and it heals for 300, and it heals for 300. Now, that's very good for when you're in team scenarios and, like, the entire team is stacked very close onto some big boss. You attach the Wisp, and as it rolls through, it really helps you to charge your Celestial Avatar form, get a bit of healing out there, okay? This is going to be one of those kind of skills you're frequently firing away to get value out of. Skill 3. Now, here's the super OP one, in my opinion. Insane skill. Ancestral Grace. First of all, the idea of this skill is really cool. This time, we become a Wisp. Become a Wisp of natural energy traversing to the target location. When you reach the target, heal nearby allies and grant protection to your pet. So here we get kind of the pet interaction here, right? Don't be deceived mousing over this tooltip thinking you're putting prot on everyone around you wherever you land. It's really just for your pet there. But so we become a Wisp. Now, once again, like other staff skills, this is 1200 range. It says transform. This isn't a transform like Rampage or Tornado. You know, fundamentally, it's not doing anything super major there. But as you look at the animation here, we get all this distance we can travel at 1200 range, and we rocket to our location. Interestingly enough, we get a little active effect showing that we're in Wisp form here. That's really never been useful in any format. I've never, like, seen the Wisp form and known to counterplay it because I saw the active effect icon. I think possibly it lingers based on some earlier design we, the community, never saw that was refined out of Druid later. But yeah, so you can become a Wisp, and this is an incredible mobility tool. And that's why I think it's actually so powerful, particularly when you take this to competitive formats. Druids are extremely good at getting around to where they need to be and escaping from under your nose because Ancestral Grace is so strong. Not only does it do everything we read out loud there, but if you look at the actual tooltip text lower down, you'll see this is an evade too, so you can't actually stop them as they rocket away very far. And then also, it's a blast. So if there's a field around, you can actually, you know, especially if it's like a water field, you can splash out further heals that is, you know, actually worthwhile to your playstyle. That would be a blast on top of the healing you actually just do as you land. So here, what I'll do is I'll send our pet onto this grub, and hopefully the grub will start attacking him. We'll hopefully get him a little bit low. Obviously, he's going to destroy the grub in general, all right? But as we become the Wisp, you'll see we do actually heal it. Now, I don't have much healing power, and he was poisoned there, so it was reduced. So the footage there was kind of terrible. But this is a good heal, guys. Trust me. It's a good heal. Massive range. Really, really nice quality of life on there. And, yeah, you'd expect a skill like this to be a leap. It's not. It's a blast, which is even stronger. So I love this skill. I think it's extremely powerful and one of the most fun things about running staff on a Druid. Next, we got Vine Surge. This reminds me a lot of Elementalist Air Staff, and bear with me here. So, you know, we're a Druid. It wouldn't make sense if we couldn't do cool things with vines, right? Druids in the original game, kind of known for building vine bridges and stuff. Well, here we go. Vine Surge. You see the animation? It throws these roots out. Spread forth vines that immobilize enemies and cleanse conditions from allies. So this is... you might read cleanse conditions from allies and think that it's a global cleanse. It's not. It's just like Air Staff on Ellie. It gets rid of incapacitating conditions. So if our pet here is immobilized or crippled or chilled, and I throw my vines through him, it liberates him from those CCs while inhibiting my opponents with those CCs, okay, or one of them specifically. So this is a good immob. These two tools together offer you so much escape potential. You can immobilize someone by throwing vines out in one direction, and as the vines creep towards them, you wisp off a million miles away in the background, and, you know, you've created an enormous gap of well over 1200 range there. You're laughing by clipping them with the edge of that. So, really nice. Again, this is one of those things that I think the really good Druids think about the condition cleanse, but otherwise, a lot of people kind of forget about it, and unfortunately so. You'll see there it actually says 7 impacts over 3 targets. Now, what that means is as it spreads out, like there's an impact here, an impact here, here, here. I think this is what it means anyway. All the way up to 7, and you can hit up to 3 people each time with that. So there you go. And then finally, we've got the skill 5. Quite often the, you know, the big defining skills of various weapon sets. Sublime Conversion. Summon an energy barrier that causes enemy projectiles to heal upon impact. This skill is really fun. While I don't think it's necessarily as OP, you know, or in terms of efficacy as great as Ancestral Grace, this skill is one of my favorite skills in the game just for having a really unique effect that people don't think about enough. So here's how it looks. We place an area on the ground, which by the way is our water field that we can splash with our skill 3 here. Very similar, simple combo. But we create this big like field. And if anyone tries to shoot us through it, it's a bit like when you're playing a Guardian, okay? The traditional core games supporty role, where they have like their walls of reflection or you have deflects. This isn't a reflect or a deflect. The projectile is allowed to continue, but instead it's like completely neutered. It does nothing now against you. Now, I would love to find a proper enemy to show you guys how this animation might truly come out. If I could find a bristleback, that would be amazing, because bristlebacks are really good at showing projectiles. But basically it turns any projectile into the game into like a little a watery refreshing splash. It like changes the arc and the radius on them as well quite often, and this is a really useful skill through various metas and balances across the entire game, just because it's always there to interact with nasty projectiles players might be using with whatever new comes to the game, whatever new enemies, whatever new skills or new balance makes projectiles strong. Sublime Conversion can often be there to save you. It's really fun in fringe areas of PvE as well, even quite well-trafficked fractals and raids, where you can drop this down and really mess up boss attacks, because it's kind of like, think of it this way, guys. A boss you shouldn't be able to stun a boss, right? You shouldn't be able to stop its animation. But if it sits down and starts doing a lot of projectiles into your Sublime Conversion and it's working, you've kind of, you know, taken the boss out of the fight for a minute. You've done the equivalent of stunning it. The healing is not... I remember when this was first showed off, I thought that the healing would be based on the damage it was doing. So, for example, if I Sublime Conversion a kill shot from a warrior, maybe, you know, I get healed, the equivalent of a kill shot. That's not how it works. The projectile just totally changes into like this watery splash that then feeds off of your skill here. But still, it's a very fun thing. And I'll edit in some footage of some bristlebacks for you guys to have seen here while I'm rambling away. So there you go. That's Staff. It's a really nice weapon set. Got pretty nice complement to various other Ranger weapon sets, particularly because it itself is ranged, but also it's got such a great gap close. It's a really good complement for a lot of melee sets you'd find otherwise. And yeah, swapping onto this to splash heals up on people, get yourself into Celestial Avatar, super fun. And I think pretty much exactly what I want from a Staff on a Ranger, which was definitely something people were looking for when Heart of Thorns came out. So that's good. Let's now look at our Glyphs. So remember, Glyphs have 2 versions. One when you are in Celestial Avatar, the other just their normal version. And there's an easy way we can kind of read and do this. First, we'll go through their normal effects, and then in the skill panel, we can easily see their Celestial Avatar ones. I'm aware I've not shown you what the avatar looks like yet. Maybe we should have done that at the head of the video, but we'll get to it in a second. Okay, so Glyph of Rejuvenation. First of all, apply significant healing to yourself and your pet while healing allies for a minor amount. Okay, so this is a self-heal of a specific amount, and then around us, we're pulsing about a quarter of that over 5 targets. And that, I think that will double up on our pet, right? So our pet gets the self-heal and then the allied heal afterwards, as long as, you know, there's not already 5 targets that it would rather deliver that impact to. So that's its regular effect. However, if we look on our user interface here and we mouse over it up here, you'll see it shows while in CA, it's not heal yourself for a small amount, it's heal yourself for a large amount. So it reverses, okay? Just to be clear, our regular version applies a lot to us and minor to our allies, while the CA version applies minor to us and a lot to our allies. You are more selfless with your heal skill. While you're in regular mode, it counts for you more. I haven't played enough Druid to actually have had a lot of meaningful interactions with that, but I'm sure the really expert Druids are very familiar and comfortable with it, and think about that as they are, playing the game and utilizing the skill. Obviously, it only has one cooldown, so you have to choose which form you want to use it in. So that's one. Next, we've got the Glyph of Alignment. So this is damage and apply conditions to nearby foes. Let's find a nearby foe. So here's a tiger. We'll attack him. Very simple glyph. You'll see the conditions it applies are cripple, poison, and weakness. So lots of incapacitating effects. Splashes that little effect out here, and you'll see he's got all of these. Really good against power damage. It's quite a specific idea for a skill, and maybe not that exciting to people. To look at the CA version, once again, you'll find we have like that reversing of effect. This time, instead of applying conditions to foes, it's healing and condition removal. I actually thought it was a lot more conditions there. It's only 2 conditions. But yeah, so something that was very offensive, damage and apply condies, becomes very defensive. Heal and remove condies. And now you'll see the problem with why I can't show every glyph and everything, because we only get 15 seconds in CA and then we have to kill stuff and build it back up. Next we get the Glyph of Equality. Daze nearby foes. It's a pretty long lasting daze as well, 2 seconds for what it's worth. This is one of your break stuns. Most of the time on the new skills, the devs will add a break stun in there, so you get the Glyph of Equality here. Over in CA, it's break stun for our allies instead of dazing nearby foes. So this will always break our own stun, but if we use it in CA, it breaks our allies' stuns too. Heart of Thorns did this a lot, AoE stun breaks. Like if you saw my Tempest highlight, you'll remember that there was a shout that does that, and there's a shout that would trigger on a trait that does that. On Revenant, you can do that. That was a big Heart of Thornsy thing, and you see it here as well. So yeah, that's the Glyph of Equality. It turns the outgoing CC into friendly stun breaks. Next, Glyph of Empowerment. Now this one's a really important glyph that defined the game for a long time. This describes this. Increase outgoing damage of nearby allies. And what you'll notice with this is it is not might. The Glyph of Empowerment is actually a unique modifier that would stack on top of might and would stack on top of warrior banners and so on. And a lot of Druid was geared like this when it originally came out, and meant there was like this irreplaceable thing because no other class could offer a Glyph of Empowerment. So you had a Druid and your top end of damage goes higher than you can imagine from any other combination, right? That really secured Druid's brilliant spots. This is the Glyph of Empowerment is the last place we see that unique modifier here now for the Druid. Obviously you have Spotter and stuff and Frost Spirit for core ranger aspects. But yeah, so as I cast the skill here, you'll see we get this nice yellow effect here. It goes away all too quickly, I think, honestly. And you get this nice spinning wisps above our heads. Again, I really like the animation, but it goes away quite quick. While those spinning wisps are above our heads, we do straight up more damage. Wherever you see 10%, that's not an ignorable modifier here. I'll show you guys it again. And yeah, that was, in fact, it appears over our fists, not our heads. That's kind of cool. I guess because my pet uses his head as a fist, it kind of appears that way. So yeah, that's the Glyph of Empowerment, and that was a big thing. That was a staple for a ton of Druid builds over the years. However, if you were to miscast this and use it while you're in CA, instead of increasing our outgoing damage, it instead would increase our outgoing healing, which is useful if you really want to splash up a lot of heals, but nowhere near as useful as maintaining the damage modifier. And one of the main issues I think that very new Druids would come across is casting Glyph of Empowerment while in the wrong attunement and kind of denying that for their team. But yeah, so Glyph of Empowerment. That's not obviously all of them. We do get a final glyph as well. That would be Glyph of the Tides. This one in particular I think is very strong in competitive formats. It's a knockback, a push away. Push nearby enemies away from you. So let's get the Tiger. And when we cast it, you'll see you get knocked off. Really strong for getting people off of nodes in Conquest, moving people into dangerous positions in World versus World where they'll be very heavily outnumbered by large Zergs and any number of situations you might think of. Also good for taking out break bars and stuff in PvE. If you use that in CA, instead of being a push away, it's a pull in, which is also useful in its own right. But, I mean, there's a lot of other tools you use to pull enemies to specific places. I think Temporal Curtain, for example, for the Mesmer, will always be the god of that. But, yeah, Glyph of the Tides. So, Empowerment and Tides really are the really two big Druid glyphs to think about. But, obviously, the whole kit's got things to offer. Finally, we do have the Elite. This is Glyph of Unity. And this is utilizing tethers. I think when Heart of Thorns was coming out. It has that kind of reversal effect as well, based on what form you're in. Tether yourself to nearby foes. Whenever you take damage, reflect damage back to the foes that are tethered to you. So this is kind of like a version of retaliation. So here, we have a maximum leash range. It can break. Here's the tether. It's this golden path. If I walk too far away, as you can see there, it does break. But if the boar attacks me while he's tethered, he kind of gets punched back in the face, you know, based on how much, how our gear is set and how aggressive we are. I've always liked the idea of running a build that stacks a lot of retaliation, because Ranger can get it in places. And then also sort of revolving around a regularly cast Glyph of Unity. Possibly the more important version of Glyph of Unity, though, is in CA, where you know, the regular versions are more offensive. The CA are more defensive. This one instead, let's see, where is it? Elite skills is tether yourself to not nearby enemies anymore, but nearby allies. And whenever you get healed, you splash the tethered allies more heals as well. So what that means, right, is if you go CA, cast Glyph of Unity, and then use like 5 and 4, you're splashing heals out, which is healing you, which is then healing them because of Glyph of Unity. And then you've got the actual impact of the skill itself, which is splashing heals out, which is healing them, and you, which is then healing them because of Glyph of Unity, right? So this is just kind of a cool thing. It's only on 5 targets, so in the 10-man formats, not so great, but you know, because some people are obviously going to be missing out on that. That explains some of the double Druid stuff we saw for so long. But in general, really nice, big, potent heals on the Glyph of Unity. And you definitely saw a lot of people running, depending on the circumstance. So there you go. That's the weapon skills. That's the utility skills. Pretty clean cut. Pretty simple to explain. Next, we've got the skills in CA itself. So I only get 15 seconds to run through these. So I will do my best, all right? Before then we move on into traits. We'll probably have to go into it maybe like 3 times. We'll get through the auto attack and the skill 2 on our first run, right? Okay. So let's see if we've got another enemy prepped. Here we go. So we got a target. Oh, okay. We're not quite in just yet. Here we go. Okay, so you're going to press F5 to get in. Consume your accumulated astral force to become a celestial avatar. So this is not like when you're playing a holo or something and the amount of resource you have like fluctuates and remains and you know, is something you play with a lot. This is actually quite binary. Once you go in, you get 15 seconds and you've spent it, okay? So here we go. We go in, we get the beautiful effect with the Celestials. Our glyphs change. The auto is Cosmic Ray. And as we press this basically, we get to summon from the heavens these rays that come down. I like the theming pair here of the Cosmic Ray with, you know, the fact that we're Celestial. So cooldown energy onto the targeted area, and it heals allies. That's all it's for. It's just a nice little ground target heal. I think that the reason the devs went with this is, in the DNA of Guild Wars 2, is the fact that for support classes, they never wanted direct player targeting. They always wanted it to be based on the environment and like actually looking at people. And so they keep the auto attack for their super supportive form, kind of the purest form of that. Like super spammable, you just click the area, it's supposed to have a high quality of life on just getting the heals where you want them to be. As an auto, obviously, it's not the most efficient way of healing people when you want to do different combos and whatnot. But, you know, if you go CA, drop your Glyph of Unity, and then just kind of spam the autos, you will splash up heals a bit, right? So, skill 2. Let's run on in as we've got this Tiger aggroed. We're looking at the Seed of Life. So, summon a seed that heals and cleanses nearby allies of conditions when it blossoms. So, this is one of the mainstays of being a druid, okay? You're going to keep dropping this little thing here. It doesn't really look like a happy flower to me. It looks like some kind of gross, like, pestilent thing. So maybe the animation's a bit off. It reminds me a lot of the beetles and things they added with Heart of Thorns, to be honest. But yes, so the Seed of Life, okay, you can kind of spam around. It's a little heal. I did just ping all this stuff here. Yeah, cleanse condies. You get 1 condi off, but it also applies a bit of blind. It's a light field, so as your allies combo in that, they'll be sharing like light aura out, which is even more condi mitigation. The Seed of Life is also good for triggering traits and things, which I'll look at in a second. But yeah, so you can kind of drop those down. Quite often, you'll find when you go into COA, you're going to be dropping the Seeds of Life as best you can. Right, we've got to charge all the way up again now. While I charge, speaking of mushrooms, we've got some here. All right, so skill 3. I'm going to read out the tooltip before we go in so we can really focus on the animation here. Lunar Impact. Call down a massive lunar beam against celestial stuff. We're calling from the power of the moon, guys. To heal allies and daze foes. So this is a very fast-acting ability that is also a blast. So if I drop my star 5, then go in, we can use the skill 3, and you'll see we blast a heal down. It dazes, It does good heals, and it's got a reasonable cooldown. So, yeah, basically, we can just... I mean, I very rarely auto while I'm in this form, to be honest. We drop down the beams and, you know, just strike as hard as we can here. With pretty good, obviously, when you're in a team scenario, there's nearly always going to be a combo field of some kind on the floor there. And the Lunar Beam is going to blast on that. So there you go, that's Lunar Impact. Next, we're looking at Rejuvenating Tides while we charge the next time. Gather tidal forces to rapidly heal nearby allies. So this is probably the more iconic CA ability. What this will do is actually hold us in place, creating a water field around us and healing on top, all right? So what you can also do, here I'll show you, since we just showed a blast. Damn it, this player came along, killed the tiger, and now I don't have enough CA. Okay, hold on, we can come here. All right, we're just going to have to dodge this boar's knockdown. Okay, cool. So, as we move on in, we'll trigger the skill 4. You'll see we get the big water field that is mobile with us, a bit like you saw with Tempest. And I think if you precast the Lunar Impact and then go into the 4, you do actually get to hold the... you do get to blast the field right in the correct time there. We ran out of time there. But so you get a nice water field, which you can run around and move with people. And finally, Natural Convergence. So first of all, you'll see this is on a 10-second cooldown. So, because we're only in CA for 15 seconds, what this means is you can kind of cast this twice. Depends on the rotation, the circumstance that you're going for at the time, right? Which I don't want to get into too much specifics here. But if you go into CA, you can cast this nice and quick. It takes a while to fully execute, first of all. Then the cooldown comes on, and if you're quick, you can get a second one before you leave. But here we go. So, channel your celestial powers, pulsing Cripple and Slow. Once the channel ends, any foes still within its radius will be trapped by a black hole, immobilizing them. So this black hole is, first of all, a lot like Continuum Splits. It's an actual thing, which also came out with Heart of Thorns, that will appear on the battlefield as like a target that people can hit. If you've ever been wandering around and seen black holes and wondering what the hell class creates a black hole, funnily enough, it's the Druid, because of, you know, its celestial elements, right? So I'll show you what that looks like. We're going to make sure our pet doesn't kill this target here, because he needs to be alive next to it. So here we go. We're going to go in. We're going to use the skill 5. I cannot move during this time. And so it explodes open, and then we get this little black hole here, you see, which pulls him in and immobes him. So we get pulsing immobe. I'll show you once again before we leave.
Don't lose hope.
There we go. There's the second. You see, we don't get much time there at all. In fact, I don't know whether the second cast actually fully finishes there. Huh. Maybe I was wrong about that. But so, yeah, that's what the black hole is, and it keeps this little incapacity mobilization on people. You'll notice here, actually, comboing the skill 5 there in CA and one of our glyphs, there's quite a lot of incapacitating condition effects on this specialization, which helps you to sustain and helps your allies to sustain. So, you know, it's another form of support, not necessarily through direct healing, but through reducing what your allies are actually being struck with, okay? So, so yeah, that's CA, that's the skills. There's various rotations and things throughout the years that people have been executing as they go in to get maximum efficiency out of them and juggle some specific traits. Speaking of traits, let's run on in with them. First of all, we've already seen the minor. Get access to glyphs, get access to CA. Next, we're looking at live vicariously. Whenever you heal an ally, you are also healed. Now, that's on a 1-second ICD, so it's not going to spam up crazy amounts. You guys might remember Mesmer in Inspiration Magic have a trait like this. I think it was called Healing Prism, and when it was first added, it never had an ICD. It was totally broken. So basically, every second, we are just getting a little bit of our own sustain as much as we're helping other people. And it's got a cool name as well to reflect the mechanics there. Live vicariously. Next, Natural Mender. So increase outgoing healing whenever we heal another ally. So this stacks up to 10 times, which basically means we get 20% benevolence as we are playing Druid in a support capacity where we're constantly being able to heal people. And there's not much more to say. Obviously, you'll be able to see that buff on people's active effects, and that's what that is, Natural Mender. So let's look, first of all, at the first rung. Here we've got Druidic Clarity. Becoming a Celestial Avatar removes conditions for you. Now, this one's super strong because, as you'll see there, it's a stun break, and it's 13 conditions. 13! So if you're trying to kill a druid with condition damage, it's best to spike your condies after you see they enter the form. Because they don't get the cleanse while they're in the... They have other cleanses, obviously, but this trait, they don't get while they're in it. They have to wait the full 15 seconds, then rebuild their CA, and then they can re-trigger it. So you should try and wait as long as possible to see them go into CA. Then go with your big Condi bombs, and you can kind of eat them up. Most people don't understand how to play around Druidic Clarity, and that allows Druids to sustain way longer than they generally should. But very, very, very strong. And by the way, this is just solo cleanse. It's not 13 cleanse from everyone around you, despite the altruistic nature of the elite spec. So you've got Druidic Clarity. Next, you've got Cultivated Synergy. Using your heal skill, heal allies around you and your pet. So we already see that functionality is in several places. This just bursts that even further. And again, you can just see how many individual little packets of healing are throwing out across all this stuff. When you combine with like a Glyph of Unity, it just starts rolling into really big heal numbers. You'll see how focused this is, not just on support, by the way, but on healing these days. It's very, very, very heal focused. And finally, we've got a more offensive one here, Primal Echoes. So this is your staff trait. It reduces the recharge of your staff skills. Very good, because it means you get access to Ancestral Grace even more regularly, which already is on a very forgiving cooldown of just 18 seconds, all right? So it reduces that, but it also means that you daze foes when you swap into staff. I actually really like that effect. Not enough classes have that, where you take a weapon trait and it gives you an effect on swapping into that weapon. I think it's a really good idea, and I only really remember it right now on Druid. But yeah, so you get even more data, and you'll see that there's actually a lot of different ways to access daze on a Druid. Which, you know, can combo with a moment of opportunity or whatever from elsewhere. Oh my god, okay, it's nighttime, the zombies are coming, so this area is going to suddenly get very dangerous. But yeah, so there you go, your Primal Echoes. Do you want to go staff, do you want to go raw heals, or do you want to go for some personal sustain for yourself? Obviously, being able to break stun break, and dodge roll as well on CA is another very powerful tool for you. Next on the middle tier for the master traits, we've got Celestial Shadow. Grants super speed and stealth to nearby allies when leaving CA. So, as far as PvE is concerned, as far as like dungeons and on demand using this as a stealth thing to clear mobs, to pass mobs, this is actually not very good at all. It's not like the on-demand stealth from a Toss Elixir S or a Shadow Refuge or blasting with a thief or whatever, because you need to build a lot of CA first, which suggests being in combat to a certain extent. And then you only get it 15 seconds after you've entered. It's not great, okay, for that. However, it is very good for other formats. Again, competitive stuff, this is really awesome. It's another thing that's beautiful to counterplay, both these top traits actually. When you know that a Druid is doing this, if he's holding a node, right, on a conquest cap, when you see he goes into Celestial Avatar, if he's trying to hold that node, what you can do is wait, expect when his CA ends, you know he's going to stealth, and then what you can do is like double dodge. You can just keep moving away so he can't hit you, so he can't reveal himself, and in that way you can guaranteed like decap him. There's so much you can do just understanding how this works. It can be really frustrating to fight Druids and Rangers. I think they stealth way too much, to be honest, particularly when they combo with Longbow, they get a little bit more. But knowing about Celestial Shadow, that it's at the end of CA, when you know to anticipate that you know exactly when a stealth's coming, things don't tend to feel so bad, honestly. I mean, the super speed at the same time is a brilliant escape tool. What more can I say? All right, next we've got Verdant Etching. Now, this one's really important for Druid, and it will become clear why when we look at a Grandmaster in a second. But for now, Glyphs gain reduced recharge. Cool. But also, whenever we cast a Glyph, we cast a Lesser Seed of Life too. So remember, Seed of Life was this skill in CA, all right? It's this. So whenever we use a Glyph now, whether we're in CA or not, we're actually triggering a version of this skill. It's called Lesser Seed of Life. It's slightly less powerful. But it's a Celestial Avatar ability that now, if we take this trait, let's actually toggle it on, we get even when we're not in CA. Look, see? It's just triggered there. I'm not in Celestial Avatar, but I just used a form of Celestial Avatar skill. So the Lesser Seed of Life does the same thing. It's cleanse, it's a mini light field, it heals, it's blind, it's all that good stuff. I think just the numbers are tweaked a little bit down. That's why it's called Lesser. And that sounds cool, I'm sure, to you guys, but you won't see why it's really cool until a moment later, where we really start to see about augmenting our allies' damage. So that's Verdant Etching. And then lastly, we got Natural Stride. Reduces duration of movement impairing conditions. Your movement speed is increased as long as you have none of these conditions. So this is a huge increase as well. Most classes get a 25% movement speed modifier, right? So they move 25% faster while on a certain weapon or when they have a certain boon or something on them. For the Druids, it's all the way up to swiftness values. You basically have permanent swiftness. Now that's power crept over the other classes, essentially, right? It's also paired with a beautifully synergistic other thing, which is immobilize and cripples and chills actually drop off of you faster too. So really fun. Natural stride when comboed with like all the Condi cleanse and stuff here is very good. Obviously, this is kind of an escape potential kind of trait, and it's competing with another escape potential kind of trait, so it's your choice which to go with. I think quite often Celestial Shadow feels better. For PvE, though, running around doing story and stuff, I think Natural Stride is actually a really, really nice pick. Not that I'd ever really take Druid, I think, in solo scenarios. At this point, I'd probably be Soul Beast or something, but, you know, it's definitely a good trait and a fun one. All right, let's look at the Grandmasters, so the big defining changes. And we'll open with a really important one, Grace of the Land. Grant increased damage to allies within the radius of your Celestial Avatar abilities. So Grace of the Land used to be, like Glyph of Empowerment, a unique damage modifier that's stacked on top of Might and stuff. Nowadays, it's not. It's keyed into the Might system itself. I think is actually personally healthier. There's a whole podcast of discussion you could get out of that, so I'll refrain myself. You guys are welcome to talk about it in the comments, though. I'd love to see your thoughts. This is kind of becoming an older topic as time goes by. But so basically, you can stack a ton of Might on people as well as healing them. You'll notice that this hits 10 targets around you. So this is really good for the 10-man formats, particularly with raiding. This is a good Might stacker. This is still one of the reasons why Druid gets a look in, because it can pump out so much Might so fast to everyone. So let's look at what this actually says, though. It's Might whenever people are in the radius of your Celestial Avatar abilities. So basically, if you affect someone with a CA skill, they get Might. Well, that's fine, you might think, but I can't always be in CA, so doesn't it mean I just get a lot of Might and then they get none? Well, here's the thing. First of all, it's good quantity of Might on very good duration, right? But here's the thing. We also have Verdant Etching, which is you cast the Lesser Seed of Life whenever you use a glyph, whether you're in CA or not. What does this mean? If I use my heal skill, I drop a seed, the seed explodes, and gives Might to me and my allies. You see this here? And so, this means that as you roll your glyphs, you can keep rolling the Might and then, you know, actually get into CA later and roll even more and even more and even more. So this combo here of the Verdant Etching plus Grace of the Land, very, very strong and a staple of a lot of PvE builds. Next, we've got Lingering Light. Whenever you enter CA, your next strike will blind your foe and it will heal you. While in CA form, your healing of others is significantly increased. This is just the big heals. This is also perfectly viable and strong in certain scenarios. 50% stronger outgoing heals. I'll note as well, the blind packet is super frustrating. When you're trying to like debunk a druid and they're running this trait, it's always so irritating. There's a kind of a sense that it's supposed to be, oh, you can counterplay it because when they go CA, you know that it's just their first attack, so you can dodge it. But their next packet of damage tends to come so quick after they go into CA, you can't really do too much about it. But yeah, so Lingering Light, again, a really good GM. And last, Ancient Seeds. I actually kind of hate Ancient Seeds. Now remember, we're on the Ranger, which means we already have Entangling Roots as an elite. We also already showed Vine Surge off on the staff, okay? We also already showed off the Black Hole. So lots of immobilization pulsing on this class immediately. Let's not even talk about Grove Runes. I think they might have been reworked now, but especially when the Druid came out, Grove Runes was still in the game, which was even more Binding Roots. Well, even before Heart of Thorns, I always loathed these mechanics. ArenaNet gave Druid a GM all about them. Check it out. Ancient Seeds. Striking a stunned, dazed, knocked down, or launched foe summons roots to entangle them. Now, we've already seen we've got lots of days available. We've had pushes and stuff. The big combo that people often would use this with is longbow, right? Because you can point blank shot someone from super far away. Doesn't even matter if you get max value out of the point blank shot. And then auto attack them, and you've knocked them a mile away, and you've immobed them. Okay? And look, this thing's stuck in that immobilization for ages, through which time I can just pew the hell out of him. Such a potent combo. Really frustrating to play against. That's before we even talk about comboing with the other stuff. Yeah, that's Ancient Seeds for you, everyone. Oh, my God. I mean, I think if I was a Ranger main, I would absolutely adore this. But since most of my experience is actually playing against it, I have such strong opinions. But yeah, so Ancient Seeds. Also, it's on a 10-second internal cooldown, but that's really not that long. The counterplay for it is to break the roots that spawn. But even when you break the roots that spawn, it doesn't instantly rip the stacked immobilized duration you may already have. You run this with a bit of condi duration, a bit of a mob increasing. Oh my lord, frustrating stuff. I mean, with the amount of cleanseless in the game these days, maybe it's not so obnoxious. But definitely, I see why it's here as a GM. I actually really like the 3 GMs on this in terms of like strength, and they set out to do a certain task and they're very strong at it. So there you have it. That's Druid, guys. That's pretty much everything. I do want to take a second, though, to go into PvP, where I have all of the pets unlocked. This character, as I say, I don't actually PvE on. My actual Druid is an Asura. But I do want to come here just to show off the Heart of Thorns pets. They aren't really a part of Druid. You could run these pets if you weren't a Druid at all, or as a Soul Beast or whatnot, but I think they are worth talking about. I'm not going to do a massive review on them. First of all, we have the Smoke Scale. So this guy's very, very, very strong. He has Smoke Assault, where he tethers onto someone, rips them apart. He gives himself might as he does it. He's got a powerful knockdown at the same time. He also has on F2 a Smoke Field, which you can then combo. Oh, I can't swap to my staff now. I just tried to. If you swap to staff, you can use staff 3 in the Smoke Field, which will blast that stealth to your allies. Very common thing. You got the Smoke Scale, first of all. Next, I guess I won't give you a full demonstration of each. You got the Bristleback, who is a ranged pet, one of the only truly successful and really effective ranged pets in the game, I would say. Has a really strong barrage ability that they can execute. Kind of misses a lot, honestly, but when it doesn't miss, it's very, very, very effective. So here, we'll show you this. So here you can see his auto attack. He's rolling through here. But the F2, it's no joke, Spike Barrage. 10 packets of damage, 4,900. Here we'll see. And it can miss, but they fire very quickly. This thing is devastating. Combo that with an Ancient Seeds or whatnot, and you're in for a hell of a time. They also kind of have this passive Sharpened Spines, which they can use. I guess I won't talk about the Soul Beast interaction, since I did that on the Introducing the Soul Beast video itself. And of course, before I forget, I always think of this as a core guy for some reason. Heart of Thorns did also add the Tiger of the feline family. So we've got Ferocious Pounce. This guy given Fury. Actually pretty good in comps where he didn't have enough Fury around. He does his slash, he does his bite, and his maul. Yeah, really actually quite powerful. I like the cats. I still like the cats. They feel like a very classic Guild Wars thing to me, but they have it. So yeah, you got those. You also got a variety of Wyverns were added with Heart of Thorns. Honestly, not as impressive as I would have wanted them to be, but they can be fun. You got the Lightning Wyvern, who's got, so these guys have very powerful buffet attacks. So Wing Buffet here, you'll see. You see he's activating it right now. Really good blowouts. This is a knockback, not a launch, by the way, so it won't like move bodies necessarily. But there's good damage on it. He's got his tail sweep, wing swipe, and then as the lightning one, he's got lightning charge. And this is a launch, but it's a launch of 0, a bit like Impact Strike or whatnot. So, yeah, good damage on there. And then the Fire Wyvern is especially fun, I think, but a bit underpowered. My flavorful pick, though, definitely from the expansion. Where is he? Let's see if we can actually figure out his location on the pet panel. Yeah, he's right next to the electric one. So this guy, again, has the wing buffet, again has the tail lash, again has wing swipes. But his F2 is really fun. You will have seen this in PvE. They become, like, immune, basically, to damage. No longer targetable. Fly in the air, dropping this massive field of fire in rings that expands and expands and expands, taking damage out. Kind of a cool point control idea of a skill. I like the idea of this having a longer cast time and wind up on the pet, so it's more counterable, but then more impact at the same time. But maybe that's another discussion. I think that's all of the Heart of Thorns pets. And that's really what they had to offer here for the Druid. So there you go. That's introducing the Druid complete. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks very much for watching. I'll hopefully get onto some of the other medium classes pretty soon. And we'll do exhaustive looks at what ArenaNet did with those. Once again, as always, in the comments, leave your desired next. I'd love to see. And what your favorite is and you really want to see me cover. And I'll be back for more very soon. I think we're halfway there now, guys. Should be good.